back to Scoundrels, Inc., another Star Wars podcast. My name is Frank Janish, and that is all you're going to get this week. We had a bit of a scheduling stuff and other stuff. One of them weird weeks where the three of us, one of us, well, just me, is able to do the show, and we wanted to make sure we stay consistent with what we've had planned out in terms of covering our Ahsoka episodes, our essential Ahsoka episodes, and then leading that into coverage of Ahsoka, which does mean if you've been keeping up with the, I guess, ever-changing or the status of what SAG-AFTRA, with the strike going on, what they're asking people to cover, not cover, and who that impacts. Us here at Scoundrels Inc. have been paying attention to that very diligently and been trying to figure out our place in all of that, as we are not members of SAG, none of us are, and but how do we still show solidarity? Do we want to go on a bit of a hiatus, or do we feel like we can keep on doing what we do but also show support for the strike? Now, for myself, I've made the decision that I still think that because I'm not in SAG or in the WGA, I can continue to do what we do here on the channel and still show immense solidarity and support for the strike, because I absolutely do support the strike. And if you watched or listened to last week's episode, I kind of go into why I'm all for unions fighting for their fair share. And I will continue to speak that on this channel, on this podcast, for as long as needed, as long as the strike is going on. As for the other guys, I don't want to speak for them, but they have their own thoughts and takes on the situation. So when they return, they can give those thoughts and those opinions if they see fit. But for right now, this week, just to keep things consistent with what we've had planned in terms of, like I said, ramping up towards Ahsoka on August 23rd, which is on Disney+, which is a Strzok company. Yes, we'll still be covering it. We do intend to cover it more as a review. I mean, we're not like Rotten Tomato critics or anything like that, or certified critics or anything of that nature, but we do want to approach the way we approached Andor and The Mandalorian and Tales of the Jedi, all the series that have been coming out since we've started doing this. I want to approach it with a discussion and kind of a critical eye, if we can. And so that's kind of where we're at as a channel. We understand that other podcasts or channels have made decisions that they feel is best suited for them, and I fully support what they're doing. And I hope, for the sake of everyone involved, that the strike is resolved sooner rather than later. Don't know if that's going to be the case, just based on following some of the stuff that's been put out there, the reporting on it and whatnot, which is something I think from here until for the duration of the strike we'll be talking about every week here on the show, as long as we do the show, as long as we're doing it during the strike. I will just tell you the things that I've been seeing that I think maybe other people, should take a chance at watching or listening to. I recently, watched or listened to Sean Astin's comments on the strike, and in terms of how the AMPTP, the producers, aren't really coming to the table for negotiations, whereas SAG-AFTRA definitely wants to keep those talks alive. And it's very hard when only one side wants to do it in terms of, coming to a compromise and negotiating things. I think it's very important to continue to listen to these voices out there that are giving their stories. And yeah, some of them may be from the A-list actors, and that's what's going to grab your attention. That's what's going to grab a lot of the general public's attention, is these A-list actors. But also at the same time, what you're seeing that comes with that is, I think misinformed people or ill-informed people misconstruing it as the millionaires just want to be more rich, which is really not the case at all. They're fighting for the actor who can barely make $26,000 to qualify for the health insurance. $26,000. You can't even live on $26,000, let alone in LA. That's insanely difficult to do. You need to have a second or a third job. And what's happening as you dive deeper into what's going on, the AMPTV, the producers, the studios are taking advantage of these actors who are trying to chase this dream. They're taking advantage of these people's dreams of fulfilling their goal of being an actor and having that as a living. They're taking advantage of these dreams and stringing them along and paying them as little as possible because they know that the dream is so strong for these people that they will still do it. But they have had enough. They have had enough, especially when, their CEOs are making $27 million a year and getting bonuses on top of that. Meanwhile, they're making insane decisions that are troublesome for their own company, but then yet patting themselves on the back and giving them bonuses. So you're going to hear this type of stuff week in and week out, just as a reminder and as some sort of place for information, if you will, about this strike in case you're not keeping up on it, which I don't blame you. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the world. But this is, I think, an important labor issue in the country and around the world that should be talked about, especially when it involves, things that we as consumers love to consume. And I like to think that, when I go watch a movie, everybody that put their heart and soul into a movie, and let's say in this case Star Wars, I hope that they're all getting paid, fairly and treated well. I will also, lastly, just to wrap this kind of thing up before we move on to what else I have planned for this episode. If you don't know, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck started their own studio called Actors Equity, and one of the first movies that they produced under that was Air, the Michael Jordan story of the basketball shoe, right? But what they were so I guess what's the word I'm looking for? So insistent upon was that everyone get paid fairly and have a sharing in the profits of the movie, of the success of the movie. And I think they're, I love their movies to begin with, but to know that they really fight for and trying to help better the industry in which they work, even though they have millions of dollars and they're doing financially very well for themselves. They also want to make sure the people in front of the camera, behind the camera, share in the success of the projects that those people are working on, and that not just because just because they're the producers, they run that company, that they're going to take in, money, but they also believe, as I've been reading, that it's fair for, a gaffer or a camera operator or whatever to share in the profits of that movie that they helped make. They helped make that success for the company. And so I think that's just a really cool thing to learn about two guys that I really did admire and respect in the business, and I really love their work as actors and sometimes as directors with Ben Affleck. Really cool to see that that's what they're doing, and I hope that can persevere throughout the industry. So if you want to know more about that, just look up Actors Equity, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised, and maybe you have a little hint of hope it can bring you in terms of, there are some very wealthy people who also want to do right by the little guy as well, and I very much think that's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. So I learned that this past week, and I thought that was really cool. So if you want to learn more about that, go look it up. It's just a quick Google search away. Okay, enough of the soapbox thing. Here on the channel, we've been doing a giveaway, and that's still going to be going on, even though it does feel a little like it's like such a promotion type of thing, which SAG and SAG-AFTRA doesn't really want you to do. But we're not SAG, and we're still fully in solidarity with the union. But with that said, we're still doing that giveaway for, it's an Ahsoka figurine, a Black Series figure. a Rebels version or a Mandalorian version. And how you can do that is if you comment right now on this video, and that counts as one entry into the giveaway. And if you reply to someone's comment, that acts as 2 entries into the giveaway. And if you do this other thing, you send us an email on how you found Star Wars. I was going to do it for like a 2-week thing and then change up the topic, but instead I want to keep this topic throughout, because I really love reading some of the stories that we've gotten in the emails about how you found Star Wars. And we're going to do a whole episode, I think, in the future, going through those emails and reading some of the stories and commenting and having a whole episode on that. So if you send us an email about how you found Star Wars, and you send that email to Scoundrels, it's definitely on the screen correctly. It's scoundrels4.inc@gmail.com. I believe that's correct. If not, check the description. Look on the screen. It's definitely right on the screen, and it's definitely right in the description box. But you send us an email there, and that's 5. That counts as 5 entries. If you've done it once, thank you. You don't have to. It's a one-time deal. It's a one-time deal for five entries. And thank you to the people who have sent the emails. Thank you very much. And also thank you to everyone who's been commenting on the videos as of late and replying to comments as well. It's really cool to see the interaction in the comments section. We really appreciate it, and I think it's a very nice thing to converse with your fellow Star Wars fan, and of course in a very nice and cordial manner, and a fun way too as well. Okay, so that's the giveaway stuff, and now getting into our Ahsoka Essentials part of the episode, where we're taking 2 episodes that you can find on Disney Plus app when we're covering through the Clone Wars right now. Actually, we're wrapping up the Clone Wars in terms of essential Ahsoka episodes. The ones we have covered in previous episodes, the past 2 episodes, if you're not aware. We started with Season 3, Episodes 21 and 22, Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt. It's a much younger Ahsoka in her journeys as being a Jedi and under the tutelage of Anakin Skywalker as his Padawan. And then last week, we jumped up a couple of more seasons to Season 5, Episode 19 and 20, To Catch a Jedi and The Wrong Jedi. Now, that's part of the 4-episode, I think it's a 4-episode arc of basically Ahsoka being kicked out of the Jedi Order, then being asked to come back in, and then her denying them or saying, no, thank you, I'm going to leave the Order because you did me dirty. You didn't believe me when I was trying to tell you everything. And so we talked about that last episode, Brandon and myself. These past 2 episodes was Brandon and myself talking about those past 4 episodes. So if you haven't watched those and are curious on our thoughts and why we think those are essential, go back and listen to those, watch those, and then leave a comment again. Those will still count. You can still comment on old videos if you haven't already and count as entries. We're keeping track of that stuff because we can see newer comments pop up. And now this week, and I'm very excited about this because this is probably my favorite arc in the Clone Wars for sure. It's Season 7, Episodes 9 and 12. It's the Siege of Mandalore arc, but it's the first episode and the last episode titled, Episode 19 is titled Old Friends Not Forgotten. And then the very last episode of the Clone Wars, closing it out, is titled Victory and Death. So we're going to get into that right now and talk about, what happens in these episodes and kind of my thoughts on why I think these episodes are essential to watch before you get into the Ahsoka series coming up later at the end of August. So with Old Friends Not Forgotten, it's basically Ahsoka. It starts off with Ahsoka reuniting with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and she's making this plea that the Republic help Bo-Katan help retake Mandalore and capture Darth Maul in the process. And I do like this reunion between Anakin and Ahsoka because they haven't seen each other since she left the Order, right? And this is the first time they're seeing each other, and it's been some time. She's a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and has been on other adventures and whatnot, as also seen previously in Season 7. Even though when those episodes were in the lower levels of Coruscant and whatnot. So with with this reunion, it was interesting to see Anakin, how he, responded to seeing Ahsoka. First a little bewildered and surprised, but then very happy and wanted to, ask her about everything. But Ahsoka is all business. She's all business. She's like, we don't have time for any of this because we have a much more pressing matter. I need you to help Bo-Katan. We need to capture Maul. I'm trying to help you guys out. I'm trying to do you a solid, basically. But it was really great to see Ahsoka be all business, and then once they kind of get through all that, Ahsoka and Anakin go to the hangar, and they're kind of, it was just nice to see, that reunion, and then to get into the hangar where the clones, have done the Ahsoka painting on their helmet as a sign of respect towards Ahsoka, and it's just a very sweet moment, and Anakin's about to give her these lightsabers back, which does beg the question, like, what was she, she had no lightsabers, like, what's the deal with that? Anyways, before that, but then Obi-Wan comes in, and he's like, we gotta go to Coruscant. Grievous, is attacking the capital, blah, 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 and Ahsoka's like, like, what's the deal? And Obi-Wan's like, look, we have a war to fight right now. They need us. And she's like, no, the Chancellor needs you. And Obi-Wan's like, that's not fair. And Ahsoka says, I'm not trying to be fair. And it's such a such an impactful line, because I think she's also seeing kind of this kind of corruption and misuse of the Jedi through way of the Republic, and how it's become more of a force for the government rather than the people, or a force for the Chancellor. But she's also trying to be like, look, there's other people here who also need saving. We can do both. And Anakin, once again, comes to Ahsoka's aid, much in the same way that he was when Ahsoka was on trial about to being kicked out of the Jedi Order. And I always appreciated and really loved the fact that Anakin was always in Ahsoka's corner. And Ahsoka really, really appreciate that. And because she greatly respects Anakin. And we've talked about this last week or the week before, that Ahsoka is almost, and after watching these two episodes, it's almost as if Ahsoka is, aside from her M count, her midichlorian level, right, is almost like what Anakin wishes he could have become had he never turned to the dark side, right? This individual who stands up for the ideals of the Jedi Order in the way that Ahsoka does, in such a pure fashion, where she doesn't like to kill unless it's absolutely necessary. She's about protecting the people. She always pays respect to whoever she comes across. That's clear when she's interacting with the droids throughout the rest of this arc. It's such a... There's a lot with Ahsoka here that I think embodies all the good of Anakin, for sure. And to see Anakin always being in her corner, and also, just to go back real quick to the Wrong Jedi episode, Anakin talks about how he's thought about leaving the Jedi Order, but can't do it, And imagine if Anakin had left the Order, what would have, the all big what if, but, that wasn't his destiny. Anyways, I thought this episode, in terms of Old Friends Not Forgotten, it's really shows that Ahsoka really fights for what she believes in and people that are in need. And, she's all about bringing down the bad guy and helping, restore what she believes is probably, I think, well, in terms of Mandalore, at least, it has to save that from Darth Maul, and that's imperative, right? And so she's going to fight for that, and she fights for what she believes in. And that's one of the best qualities about Ahsoka. She doesn't back down. She was, again, very stern and forthright in that meeting with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and was like, look, you cannot abandon these people. And Obi-Wan's like, that'll abandon, that's like, we're breaking like 100 years of treaty. But nonetheless, what's cool is that Anakin finds a loophole and promotes Rex to captain, and then Ahsoka is like a liaison, basically, and so that she has Rex and whatnot, and then they go off to Mandalore, and then she eventually encounters Maul and fights Maul and captures Maul, blah blah blah. We're not talking about those episodes, even though they are just as important, and I would love to talk about them again some other time. But in terms of what we broke down 10 episodes, so they kind of all go together, this whole arc. But when we get to Victory and Death, at this point, Order 66 happened, and she's saved Rex. The chip has activated, and she's done the surgery on Rex and gotten his chip out. And when they're trying to make their escape off the ship, Rex goes like, "They're trying to kill you. These clones, they are willing to die to kill you. Like they're willing to die." And Ahsoka, again, I think this says so much about Ahsoka. And she goes, "They may be willing to die, but I am not the one to kill them." And that's profound for two reasons. One, it just speaks to she's not looking to kill needlessly or senselessly ever. But also two, she has fought her I guess a lot of her upbringing, was with these clones. She fought tooth and nail with all of these clones for a vast majority of her life up to this point. And I think, it's tough to, kill, even though it's in self-defense, people that you fought alongside with. And she knows something's up, so she knows it's not really them. And if she doesn't kill them and only kind of maims them, and they can survive, she tells Rex set the stun, and maybe something, she still has hope that who they really are is still deep inside them, and that maybe there's hope for them. One of the best scenes that I love from this final episode, Victory and Death, is when Ahsoka is talking to Rex. It's in that the dialogue of I'm not the one to kill them, but she takes off Rex's helmet, and you see that tear from Rex. I mean, like, he is just absolutely broken. And she tells him, "You're a good soldier." It was such, and it's cool because of the relationship that Rex and Ahsoka have, again, through all the years of the wars, and really seeing Ahsoka come back into this kind of this new person, if you will, more mature person, and they're on one last kind of ride, if you will, up to this point, in terms of trying to escape the ship alive. And it's such a great, exciting sequence on the ship where she's not trying to kill these clone troopers, but they are trying to kill her, and she's disabling them or cutting their blasters in half. And meanwhile, Darth Maul's on the side trying to take off in the ship. And I do love this part where they're in the hangar and Maul takes off and Ahsoka uses the Force to hold on to the ship. And I think when I was living with Kevin during the pandemic, when this was being released, I called it the Filoni Flex. I think we've said it once or twice before on the show, but I call it a Filoni Flex because I think he's just demonstrating how powerful Ahsoka is. Not so much powerful to bring down a ship back down into the hangar, but enough to kind of like hold it in place, but only for so long until she realizes she has to let go in order to save Rex. It wasn't, she had to make a decision between trying to hold on to Darth Maul and sacrifice Rex, but even still, she can get Maul and on the ship and off the ship, but it might cost Rex's life. And she goes, "It's not worth it." So Maul, off you go, and she finds another way off the ship with Rex on that Y-wing. But also, again, I want to go back to when she enlists the help of the droids, and the droids absolutely are enthusiastic to help Ahsoka because Ahsoka always paid attention to the droid and always respected and cared for droids. And it pays off here. All of that pays off with the droids there, helping her any which way they can, adjusting levels here and there and whatnot. It was just kind of like a culmination of really who Ahsoka has been throughout the series, and yes, even the clones have turned on her, but before that, we saw how much they respected her and how they still saluted her and called her commander, right? And it's just, so now when they are firing on her, it's very, very sad. It's very, it's such a tough thing for, I think, someone in Ahsoka's case to look at people that she probably loves and respects and admires, and see them turn on her and not be able to understand why, but having the ability to fight through that for survival, to at least help help herself and Rex off this ship. And man, what a sequence! I really love this sequence in terms of kind of like she's floating through the air, or falling through the air as the ship's going down and landing on the ship with Rex, and then we get to probably one of the most just emotionally charged, quiet scenes in all of Star Wars, especially Clone Wars, but all of Star Wars, where her and Rex presumably, right, have buried the crew, the clones that were on that ship, and you see all their helmets, and you see Jesse's, and it's just, and the music is just phenomenal, and you see her, drop the saber, and it kind of goes back into the I'm no Jedi, right, type of thing, but it's, she's coming to terms with it, that she's got to hide. She can't be a Jedi. Look at what happens. So maybe, I'm very curious in terms of, what's really, I don't know if anybody else out there has thoughts on, like, what is really going through her mind at this point. Do I just have to be in hiding? I mean, it's still, I think, very fresh, obviously, after Order 66 and whatnot. It's such a heartbreaking thing these were lightsabers that Anakin gave her, and now she's dropping them on this planet in front of clones that were trying to kill her. And she doesn't know about Anakin, or she doesn't know about anybody else really at this point, And then there's that final scene where it flashes forward to who knows exactly when, but it's Darth Vader, and he's at the site and finds the lightsaber in the snow, picks it up, ignites it, and walks off. And it just closes out on the trooper helmet, with the Ahsoka painting and stuff like that, and it's Anakin walking away, or Vader walking away, and it just really, I thought it was such a beautiful shot to end the series. And I think it also represents, Ahsoka is a big focal point of that series, and she's definitely one of my favorite characters of all time in Star Wars. So for those of you who have watched it, what are your feelings on these two episodes, or really the arc, the Siege of Mandalore arc in general, and Ahsoka's role in it, and what do you feel is essential about these episodes that really conveys who Ahsoka is as a person, and what we could take from this move into the Ahsoka series? Because what I'm curious about is really all these lessons that Anakin has taught her over these years, and now she comes back and kind of puts them all into play, all into practice or whatever. And because one thing we didn't talk about, which is another episode, was the Order 66 episode, when she's defending herself on top of, like, I guess, what was it, like a map or a hollow map, whatever it was. But that gets explained a little bit more in Tales of the Jedi when Anakin's training her, and you see, Anakin has trained her for every possible thing. He's trying to protect her by training her, and all of that stuff is on display in these last episodes of Ahsoka. So I really feel like Ahsoka and Anakin are so closely tied together because of Anakin's, insistence on her being the best. I mean, I think there's some ego in wanting his own Padawan to be like the best Padawan, but also just he has such care for Ahsoka. And I think that informs Ahsoka a lot in ways that I think it was hard for Anakin to fully express, and it comes out through Ahsoka. So I'm very curious in terms of what we could see from Ahsoka, especially at this later stage in her life. The Empire has fallen, and now there's a new rise coming, right, with Thrawn. And what type of Jedi is she really? And how much does she reflect on her years with Anakin, and how much does that inform her who she is, during this period of when we see her in Ahsoka? So I'm very curious to see how that is going to be played out potentially in the show. Okay, so before we wrap up, and not make this episode too long, because it's just me, there we have one question I want to get to. That was it was a comment that was left on last week's video from Loidus Maximus. Thank you very much, Loidus Maximus. And here's what he had to ask/say. He goes, so I was thinking about how fitting Ahsoka's role as the first fulcrum in Rebels was, as she is almost the fulcrum that is supporting and connecting the entire Star Wars franchise at this point, and her influence spans across almost every major storyline. Do you think that Ahsoka was always intended to be so important from the moment she was conceived of in the Clone Wars animated movie, or do you think it grew into that organically? Also, if you rank Star Wars characters on how important and influential they are and have been in molding their galaxy and how they represent their faction, be it Jedi, Sith, or other, how high do you think she is? For example, clearly Yoda, Kenobi, Luke, and Palpatine are hugely influential and important to the survival of their factions during the near extinction both went through when one after the other in the timeline. That was kind of a weird sentence to read. I don't know if that was right. But anyways, continuing. Is Ahsoka just as important? She spoke out against the Council and stepped down from her position within the Order when opening her eyes to the true corruption of the Jedi and the Senate. She helped Kanan train Ezra to try and keep true Jedi ideals alive in a new generation. She clearly is helping Luke do the same with Grogu during the Book of Boba Fett. She's integral to the formation of the Rebel Alliance, and soon we are sure to find out new ways she helped to keep the light side strong too and fight for justice and freedom, in the Ahsoka show. I would argue that she's just as important as the aforementioned characters, if not more so. But I'd be interested to see what you guys think and if there's anyone in canon that you guys might think is even more integral than anyone I mentioned. Thanks, guys. Hope you keep up the great work. And no worries if this question doesn't make it to the podcast. Hope you're all doing well. May the Force be with you always. Thank you, Lotus Maximus. And guess what? It made the podcast. So, here we go. In terms of, do I think Ahsoka was always intended to be so important from the moment she was conceived? I don't think this was like the plan to basically tell her entire life story almost, in animated and then in live action form. And then, obviously there's books as well. I don't, and probably other comics and stuff like that. I don't think that was like the plan. I think it was probably, and this might have been said somewhere by Dave or George Lucas somewhere, but I think it was probably more to, and I think George has talked about he wanted Anakin to have a Padawan. I forget his exact reasoning, but I don't think it was always to be kind of like this linchpin throughout major points in the timeline as she goes along. So I don't think that I don't think that was the intention. And I do think it happened organically. I think dots started connecting themselves, and it goes, oh well, who would fit here? Ahsoka. And you know what? Who could aid in the siege of Mandalore? We could have Ahsoka do it, and this would tie into Anakin, and we could do blah, blah, blah. So I think things just kind of fell into place as the story was being told. And so I do think it just kind of made sense as it went along. I could be wrong, but that's I kind of think. Because if they were like, okay, let's create Ahsoka here, and then perhaps she's still a major player in the galaxy, whether it's for the Republic or the Empire or the Rebels or the New Republic in like 50 years or blah blah blah, and then she can blah 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 put down another surging force, whatever. I don't think that was the case. So yeah, I do think it was all organically, and I think it really works for her to be the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. She's out there trying to save the galaxy when her master turned Darth Vader and is trying to take over the galaxy. So I think it's, and for a little bit there, she didn't know that Darth Vader, was Anakin. And so it's like this master, her former master, a master trying to take over the galaxy, control the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Padawan is out there trying to stop that from happening. And I think there's really cool, is it synergy or parallels there? Whatever the best word is for that. I really think it's cool that, they're still, they were once master and apprentice, and now they're two forces fighting against each other, So I think it's an interesting thing for both of those characters. And even though Darth Vader is now dead at this point when Ahsoka takes place, the live action show, she's still trying to fend off what he was involved in. So, with all that said, I'm still curious to see what that means. If that plays into the show going forward. And now, in terms of how influential she is, yeah, it's hard to say that she's not very influential. I think your points with Rebel Alliance being fulcrum, Ezra and Kanan, like that's going to have, I think, a much more profound impact once we find out what's going on with Ezra in the Ahsoka show, if that's going to happen, or maybe that's happened in Filoni's movie. But Ahsoka, again, with Luke, who is also a huge influential character on the galaxy, basically helped destroy the first Death Star and the second one, and killed in Darth Vader and all of that stuff, and the Emperor Palpatine, right? The first time, and then, and so, he's obviously a huge influential character, and at this stage in the game, when he's trying to build up a new Jedi Order, what is he learning from Ahsoka? Obviously, things don't go well, for Luke in that regard, i.e., Kylo Ren. So, I still think she's a very influential character. I mean, I think she's right up there with the Yodas and the Kenobis and Luke's, and Anakin, and I would throw in there as well, Palpatine, definitely. So I think she's very much important. I think I would throw Mon Mothma up in that conversation, because I think we're going to see more so kind of what her lack of action. I don't know how to quite say it yet, but whatever she does, for the New Republic in terms of how it was demilitarized and it helped bring about the First Order, I think for better or for worse, her actions are very influential, right? Especially as it pertains to the sequel trilogy. So there's a lot going on there. And then I think that was there another question inside this thing here? I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, if you guys also have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. But if you want to make sure that we do see them, you can join our Discord. That link is also in the description, and we ask for questions every week in there. And if you do submit questions in there, we definitely will get to them. If you do leave them in our YouTube comments, I can't guarantee that we will see them or remember that they are there or where we saw them. But again, please leave a comment or a question in the YouTube, and we will more than likely, I'll find it, I'll see it, and if that works better for you in terms of submitting questions, Discord's not your thing, then definitely leave them on there, and more than like 95% of the time I'm going to see it and then ask it on the show and answer it. Okay, so before you wrap up here, just real quick, what we're going to be covering next week. We're moving out of Clone Wars, and I think we're doing, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let me see, we're doing Rebels, wait, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, what? Yeah. Okay, so we're doing next week, I'm looking at my notes here, Tales of the Jedi, Season 1, Episode 5, Practice Makes Perfect, which I kind of talked about a little bit in regards to the Siege of Mandalore, Order 66 sequence, and then Rebels, Season 2, Episode 22, Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 2, a banger of an episode from Rebels, so we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that one, because if you're familiar, that's Ahsoka v. Darth Vader, and huge implications with that outcome, and that I think is no, scratch Tales of the Jedi. That's right. That's the note I was looking for. Scratch Tales of the Jedi. Here's what we're doing: both Rebels episodes, Season 2, Episode 22, Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 2. And then Season 4, Episode 13, A World Between Worlds. We were going to do Tales of the Jedi, that episode, but then we were like, I don't think that's super essential. It's a nice anecdote to the Order 66 thing. But we want to talk about Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2 and A World Between Worlds. Especially think that stuff could be very essential to what we could possibly see in the Ahsoka show coming up at the end of August. So Those are the next 2 episodes we're talking about next week, so make sure you watch those. And then you can also leave comments or questions about those episodes you want to hear from us or what have you. And we can get into all of that good stuff next week. I'm looking forward to talking about those because I haven't watched those episodes in a little bit. I'm not doing a Rebels rewatch per se right now. I did one like during Andor. When Andor was out, I did a whole Rebels rewatch during Andor. And that's a pretty cool parallel between like adult side of the Rebel lines and then like the more kid-friendly version of the Rebel lines, kind of paralleling how that works. So try that out if you haven't. I do recommend an Andor Rebels parallel watch, if you will. But regardless, next week, Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2 and A World Between Worlds, Rebels episodes. That's going to be a lot of fun. All right, I've talked for way too long now for this episode just being me, but, you know, hey, it's me.
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.